So you talked about a shock system. You see this TSA as a shock system, and I'm asking, yes, it's a shock system that's needed to move the entire system forward.
Yes.
But what happens to the effects of the liquidity problem or challenge? How do we get that sorted out? Do you think this shock therapy would work, and how quickly can it be sorted out?
It will work in the short run. It will work in the short run. You see, you need to have life first before you talk of maintaining that life. The Nigerian financial system has ceased to have life prior to now. Now we are restoring some life to it. Get that life first, then you can see how to maintain it.
Yeah, but the question is, are you not worried right now in terms of if at this time? I mean, I know you said we have permanent secretaries, but people will tell you they're not the same. That we still do not have ministers. It's almost the end of September. Oh,
of course, we can't even have a ministry, for example, without ministers. Even when you have ministers in some other areas, you can have just about 18 ministers, for example. And those ministries that do not have ministers doesn't mean that they will have to atrophy, they will shut down. See, political office holders, yes, you should have ministers, but it does not mean that the Nigerian government is not constituted once you have the President of the Federal Republic. Because the President of the Federal Republic is not just the head of state, it's also the head of government. And he can run the government with assistance, of course, from ministers. But if there are no ministers, it does not mean you don't have government. Yeah, but we are not running a parliamentary system, don't forget.
I'm not talking about the constitution of government. I think that people who are very versed in that have made it very clear, eminent lawyers have made it very clear that we have a government as it is. Yes. But then the constitution also prescribes ministers for the president, which he must appoint from the different states that we have of the Federation. People have also been used to this tradition of how, you know, the president is able to run the policies that he wants to run, you know, with the ministers that he has on the ground. They're the ones who push vehemently. We've seen the work that ministers can do when they're serious with their portfolios. And so rightfully, quite a number of people are worried that how many months into this administration we'll get to see ministers. Don't you share that worry?
No, we just have 4 months into this administration. Just 4 months. And 4 months may not be too long a period to do serious planning for a system that will be bedeviled by some impunity. See, it is on the 30th of September. When on the 30th of September we do not have a ministerial list, that I can begin to be apprehensive. Yeah, the president said he's going to announce his minister on that day, on or before that day.
Now, but considering the political atmosphere, I mean, the fact that, you know, there's also, it looks like there's some trouble with the Senate as well. Do you see that ministerial list being able to sail smoothly through the Senate?
I'm not aware of any problem with the senators. Of course, the one senator may have some problem with the Code of Conduct Tribunal, but how does that translate to problems with the Senate in the Nigerian Federation? I mean, see, the Senate is different from the Senate president.
Now, when you say one senator, are we not underplaying it here? Because we're talking about the Senate president.
So?
And if the senators perceive this to be an affront to them, especially if they believe it's coming from the executive arm of government, do you think that there will be a trouble? There will be trouble coming?
That would be a very strange and ludicrous perception. If a person, for example, has a problem with the law and is facing it, how does that destroy the institution? The Senate of the Nigerian Federation is an institution itself, independent and separate from the Senate president.
So you do not see it having any effect on the economy?
I don't see it. The senators are distinguished men and women. People who have the capacity to be able to live above politicking, especially petty politicking, into seeing the significance of the Nigerian nation and the singularity of heart of the moral agent that we have now, the President of the Federal Republic. So the Senate will be writing its name in gold if it does the right thing. Do the needful and stop this issue of it. I can't see it. I can't see the personal issue of the Senate President affecting the Senate of the Nigerian Federation.
You talked about, let me take you back to that TSA matter. Now, when the CBN earlier came up with the cashless policy, there were certain agencies of government and indeed certain levels of the Nigerian society that were exempt from the cashless policy.
Yes.
Now, the president talked about the TSA and says all government agencies, revenue generating agencies, should pay all the monies accruing to the government to the TSA. But some of the government agencies were again let off the hook.
Yes.
How's that going to work out in, as you said, creating sanity within the system?
Of course, we have more than 1,001 revenue handling agencies of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, and exempting just a couple of times, just about 4 or 6c of them will not do much damage. Take
one of the major ones.
Yes,
one of the major ones.
Of course, in some areas, reasonable to say those income that you earn outside of your shores should also be paid into the TSA.
Do you remember the audits that was done on the NNPC, partial audit as it may be?
Yes.
There were stories about some monies that could not be traced, that could not be accounted for. Am I correct?
Well, that's true.
So if you're talking about government being able to trace its incomes, and an agency that earns money for government had a report that they could not trace certain incomes, that agency is still let off the hook. I ask you again, do you think that's a wise
Oh, thank God we now have new managers of the NNPC, at the heads of affairs of the NNPC. You see, you cannot separate good governance from moral agency. There's the moral agency there. A person in charge of the NNPC, the person in charge of the NNPC now knows very well that he will do the right thing. He must just do the right thing because he has the antecedents. He has the antecedent of accountability and transparency. That is it.
Nigeria is going to be 55. I know we're talking the economy, but Nigeria is going to be 55 in a couple of days. What are your thoughts as the Independence Day approaches?
My thoughts will be on the budget. On the budget. I just pray that my country changes from this incremental system of budgeting to zero-based budgeting, or at least for now, performance budgeting style. Don't forget the PP, the performance budgeting system, which of course requires that you must critically, vigorously search for and seek the utility, the value of every item of expenditure before you put money into it. It's far, far better than the incremental traditional system, which of course, the only advantage is that it is simple. What do you do in the incremental system? You simply just add a little money this year to what you spent last year. That's all. That's all. A lazy man's armchair approach. So I just pray that we change to a zero-based budgeting system in which every item that will be on our budget document will be investigated. First, for its cost effectiveness. Second, whether we have financed it in the past and it has failed or it has worked well, whether that budget, that item still requires more expenditure or that it requires no expenditure. If we are able to change to that and we have a multi-year budgeting system in which we can just, one government, the government of the Federal Republic need not have just more than one budget in 4 years. I expect the President of the Federal Republic to do that. And that is, of course, we've been in line with the report of the Professor Dotun Phillips report of 2000, budget review system that the President Obasanjo ordered in 2000. And they came out with a report. And that report was in favor of PPBS, planning, programming, budgeting system, which is very close to performance budgeting system anyway. And you just have to do that. And I also look forward to a system in which the Nigerian Federation will just stop a system in which budget will not be ready until 4, 5, 6 months into the financial year. Take, for instance, during President Jonathan's government, that lasted about 5 or 6 years, no single budget in Nigeria was ever made as early as January. In fact, all the budgets were so late that they went to the second quarter of the year.
That wasn't his fault. I mean,
it
was presented oftentimes.
All the box tops on this table.
Oftentimes, it was presented on time. I mean, wouldn't the National Assembly take their own share of the blame?
Presented on time. The last budget, this year's budget, was actually presented in December of the previous year. So you want the National Assembly to pass and not scrutinize the budget for a period, to scrutinize a single budget. Even
that was the budget
take 4 months.
of this year. But the budget of the year before was presented sometime, was it in October? It was presented quite early.
Any budget presented earlier, I mean later than August, is a budget that is already late.
So in other words, the budget
should be presented in July.
No, in other words, the budget for 2016 is already late.
Budget
based on what you're saying.
Of course, we now have a system in which the president is going to submit a supplementary budget bill to the National Assembly. Don't forget, you see, every government that has been constituted in this country in the last 16 years actually submitted extra budgets or supplementary budgets at the year in which it was inaugurated. So that's what we are going to have. I expect that from year 2017, the government will not write more than one budget for the rest 3 years.
And if that doesn't happen, what will you then say?
Then we can expect that the capital budget, the capital content of that budget will be frustrated. Will be frustrated. Because, see, budget is made up of 3 parts. The debt part, recurrent part, and the capital part. Now, the recurrent budget can easily be serviced any year. I mean, what does it take? You always pay salaries. And at any rate, our law says that if you cannot have budget in default of that budget for the period of 6 months within the next year, then you can still finance. That means you'll still be paying salaries. That's recurrent. No problem about that. The problem about budgeting in Nigeria is about capital expenditure. And so if your capital budget is actually late 4 years, 5 months into the year, what it means is that the planning, contractors will not be able to bid within the right time and to get certificate of no objection, which is the requirement of the PPB, of the procurement bill or the procurement act, will also require that the budget, that they scrutinize. The due process will have to be done. Now, if the budget was not ready for 4 months in the year, and the due process will take another 4 months, when will the capital budget be implemented? Meanwhile, you are paying salaries. You are paying salaries for job not done.
So, as it stands right now, we can expect that 2016 budget is already late.
Surely. Absolutely late. Absolutely.
And
late.
the spending for next year is going to be uncertain as well?
Well, we can trust this government, at least tentatively, to be able to do some efforts, at least contain waste. But for next year's budget, if next year's budget is not ready, and I don't think it's ready, if it's not ready by September or the end of September, it is not yet ready. All of us know this. Then it is actually late. It's actually late. Very late.
Dr. Ogunyemi, quite an interesting moment with you. Now we have even tried to look at the budget and budget presentation and the kind of budgeting system we've always had in the past 16 years. Well, we'll stay on that budgeting matter. We do hope that by the 30th of this month, if anything magical does happen concerning those that will man the affairs of our economy, we should be able to bring you back and see what we can glean from the analysis of those that will be coming in as economists. We'd like to thank you so much for sharing your insights. Dr. Tunji Ogunyemi is a lawyer and also a budget historian looking at the state of the economy of Nigeria.